Hey friends, welcome to the Equipping Podcast from Citylight Church in Omaha. Our goal is to help you grow in wisdom and love for God and your neighbor. We hope this episode encourages you and equips you in your walk with God. So this is a weird one, I think.
Yeah.
You told me you wanted to read this book, and then it turns out you hadn't finished reading it either.
You read it faster than I did.
I actually finished it before you. Yeah.
Well, actually, going a step further than weird on this one, I'll tell you. So I am not a very academic. You know, my academia is all ad hoc and amateur, very amateur, right? So when I read or hear somebody and I'm like, man, that guy's really cool, I almost never bother to remember their name.
Yeah.
And then like later on, I'll encounter them.
Who is that again?
Yeah. So I actually first encountered Paul Kingsnorth on a podcast called Symbolic World.
Uh-huh.
And it was referring to an article he had written for First Things.
Right, yep. And that First Things article was really what kicked off the interest in Paul Kingsnorth.
Yeah. And then I ended up reading his essay.
Well, hold on. I should say that. That's what kicked off the interest among Paul Kingsnorth among Christians. Right.
But so
he had been well known in the UK, especially as being an environmentalist.
Yeah, poet, environmentalist, scholar, all of that. So that made me go back and read the essay about he called The Cross and the Machine, right? Yep. His sort of recap or retelling of his own sort of conversion to Orthodox Christianity. Mm-hmm. All of this, at this point, I still hadn't bothered to learn his name.
Right.
So I'm reading several things, listening to him speak and things like this.
You've got an unlabeled basket in your mind.
At this point, these are interesting ideas, but I'm still not. I haven't. Sure. You know, and I apologize. I know Paul Kingsnorth does listen to things. If he hears me talking about him like he's this product on a shelf, I'm so sorry. I think he would be hurt by that. But anyway, so then I'm reading this. You know, after we read Hannah Coulter.
Sure.
Which Hannah Coulter has this yearning for a place, right? And a desire to preserve that. Mm-hmm. And this book wrestles with that in a different way, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But it wrestles with almost the other side of that. Not quite. I wouldn't say he disagrees, but there's a different take on it.
That's how you originally framed it to me. So,
and that's what made me, because remember when we were talking about Hannah Coulter, one of the things I mentioned was that I grew up on a farm, and a lot of the farming just wasn't that romantic to me, right? Like when you kill chickens are not that romantic. Yeah. Right. Especially at 3 or 4 hours into that, exercise of killing hundreds of chickens. Now they're very unromantic.
Right.
And so anyway, so I read that. So I wanted to read this, and we were talking about it. And then the other day I'm talking to, it was either this or Against the Machine. I have both of them in my inbox, which I'm now going to get Against the Machine and read that, I'm sure. But then I'm talking to somebody in church the other day, and we're just talking about what we're reading. And I said, something by King Paul's North or North King Paul. I'm finally bothering to learn his name, right? Yeah. Now that I'm reading his book and everything else. And then the other guy's like, I never heard of him. And then we talk for a little bit longer. And then totally, like, the conversation had changed topics. And we come back, and he says, I'm reading this book called Against the Machine.
Yeah. And I'm which is by Paul Kingsnorth.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's Paul Kingsnorth. It's like, we just happen to both be reading this. Yeah. So it feels to me like Paul Kingsnorth has been cropping up a lot for me around different places. And I don't know if that's just a bias where you see everything. Once you're looking for it, you see it. Or if Paul Kingsnorth is popular right now. But
So let me give. Yeah. So this is the book is Savage Gods.
Yeah. So here's a picture.
And
here it is.
I'm trying to remember where it was in one of his articles on his I think on his blog. Where he said that it was I'll have to find the exact quote, but it's essentially a morbidly introspective book.
Almost like chronicling his own breakdown. I don't want to be, again, I feel bad if Paul Kingsnorth is listening.
We're doing everything that we can to try and tell people, hey, don't keep listening to this podcast.
No, I'm just saying, like, I don't know if but it does. It feels like we're reading him having a breakdown.
Which it turns out it sort of is, right? So let's just give a couple spoilers on this. So I would say, first of all,
I can't spoil it.
Yeah, right.
Because it's a beautiful read.
What is it?
It's worth, partially because I'm saying
it's like trying to summarize a poem.
Yeah. If I was like to tell you all about, I don't know, Yeats's poems, which he talks about a lot.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be spoiling. I think you should read the poems.
I think it was W.H. Auden who famously read a poem, and maybe it was Eliot, but anyway, he's done, and somebody raised their hand, and there's Q&A, and they're like, so what's this about? And he just starts reading it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So part of it is like, we're not spoiling this one, because you should read the book if you're interested. He's
but
beautiful
on a personal level, so Paul Kingsnorth was sort of made this really crazy transition, right? I mean, like he was a very active environmentalist. Maybe you have more details on that, but again, it's fair to say full on left. Like this is a guy chaining himself to things, or at least with people who are chaining themselves to things, on boats to places. Yeah. He's also spending time in indigenous, almost completely untouched tribes. Papua New Guinea, right?
Yeah. So spending a lot of very sort of primal, primitive, sort of like learn from the
absolutely.
Yeah. So he's got that sort of, I would say, extreme environmentalist, political
and very motivated and active in trying to
change the world,
right, in order to change the world, right? I think he says in here that he had a Messiah complex, like he wanted. He's like,
he talked about getting that.
Here's
from
a
his
problem.
father.
We got to fix it.
Yeah,
right?
Talks about getting that from his father. That his father, if anything, instilled in him early on do things to change the world around you, like make things happen. Right? Yep. You're either a winner or a loser, I think you'd say.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that on a religious level, he was a Wiccan. He became a Buddhist,
Zen Buddhist,
and kind of in his own weird way practicing Buddhism, but then had this conversion to, like you said, Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, so he wrote
the last
this
few years.
So this was published, just to give you guys a timeline. This was published in 2019. So he's still. It seems like if I'm interpreting his book, it seems like he's still wrestling through some very, almost the pinnacle or the peak of a collapse. Right? Like he's come by the end of the book. He's saying, "I don't have any conclusions for you. I just have questions." Right? And then in 2021, a blog entry comes out called The Cross and the Machine, which he talks about the machine a lot. It's a major theme in his writing. In fact, he has a book called Against the Machine.
Yeah, and give us a brief overview. What does he mean by the machine?
He would be talking about, he's not just talking about capitalism. He's talking about,
but he is talking about.
He's talking about capitalism, consumerism. Yeah. He's talking about a world system of governments. It's actually, he's not talking a lot about what we say when we say the world in Christianity. He's talking about a world system that will chew up everybody and everything and spit them out and produce only products.
Bigger, stronger, faster, wealthier, more power.
And some of it is going to sound very leftist, and some of it should sound very Christian, and some of it sounds very right. Conservative.
In fact, he made that point elsewhere, in that he kind of felt left behind by his fellow environmentalists, because what he was after was actually sustainable ways of life, which would operate on a sort of small local level. And as people began to get more and more obsessed with global warming,
politics,
they began to see this as that we need to pull the levers of power at a much larger scale.
I've heard another author that I read recently was described. He was a founding member of Greenpeace, and he described the same feeling, being left behind. And for him, and I'm not saying it was Paul Kingsnorth, but for him, he described the same idea that we were looking for sustainability, and in moving toward global power, we actually became anti-human. Right. And he said that was never the start. That was never the beginning of Greenpeace. Was never anti-human.
Yep.
So kind of the same.
And this is, and I would say, when he talks about the machine, I mean, like the ultimate manifestation of it for him is he's very, very concerned about AI.
Right. So
and especially the ways that the creators of AI are thinking about what they're doing.
Yeah, they're seeing it that way too. And I guess that's a major part of his book, Against the Machine. He does talk about AI quite a bit in that. It's funny because I just recently started a Bible study with a group of guys on Revelation, and to sort of start out, we wanted to plot out a melodic line or a central theme of the book, and to do that, because we haven't read the whole book well yet, it's hard to do that quickly. So we watched the Bible Project's Revelation videos together as sort of a starting point, and it's their their image, their drawing of Babylon at the end is a woman riding this beastly steel-teethed, this monster with steel teeth.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm drawing a connection here that I'm not drawing a new connection, because it's actually in that original podcast where I first heard him, the Symbolic World episode that features him. They talk a little bit about this connection, but I think a fair representation of the machine, if you're looking for a biblical thing, would be the beast part of the image in Revelation of Babylon is this woman pursuing lust and carnality and fun at the expense of everything else, right? Riding on the back of this machine that ultimately will eat her. I think the machine would be the beast half of that image. Part of that, and actually, I think that I'm probably going too far here, but I would say that the white mistress, the white goddess of inspiration and poetry would be the other side of that. Is that he's actually in this book wrestling with which of these two gods how do I escape this one god and serve this other god that is itself savage? I think the other god is the fiery part.
So let's take a step back, because when he writes this, he's not a Christian,
right?
But he's really wrestling because, and this gets back to Wendell Berry, he's done a sort of Wendell Berry thing, right? Like he grew up in the
he's living the life.
London suburbs.
Yes.
He's married. He's got several kids. I think it was
2
3.
in the writing of this book. I think it might be 3 at this point, but I think it's 2 at this point.
But his wife is a doctor, a medical doctor, and they decide to just sell up and move to Ireland,
buy whatever they can afford. Right. So not a nice.
Yeah, they're not millionaires, but they're
remote Ireland.
He says he bought a field in Ireland, and so they're just developing this plot of land, right?
Yeah.
And what he's after is he's after people in place, like he's after rootedness, and so with that. And I
think that forms the central question at the beginning of the book.
Right.
Like at the beginning of the book, he's asking, "Have I screwed up? I don't feel it."
Yeah.
Right. Or sometimes I feel it, sometimes I don't.
And I think he's also going through a little bit of a crisis in terms of his vocation, because he says at one point in time that he's used to crafting these words for urban people, and now he's just surrounded by farmers. Right. And nothing against them, but it's just he's undergoing this sort of internal
struggling with meaning. How can he say that these very sophisticated ways of expressing very sophisticated ideas are more meaningful than what the farmer that he's going to have a beer with that night cares about? Yeah,
he writes, you can't just turn up in a place and claim it, right? A place needs to claim you. People belong across 2 axes, both time and space. Right. So he's the new guy coming into this place, and so he doesn't really find a place of rootedness. He actually gets more uprooted.
Right. I think he actually, like I was saying, so we were prepping for this. I think he does find a resolution for this question, but I actually don't think it becomes the central question of his book. I think by the end of the book, the central question has more to do with some other even bigger ideas.
Right.
But I do in page 72, he says something like, he's talking about the weight of running and the weight of staying. He says maybe they balance out in the end. I wonder if they're all like weights on each side of a balance. I wonder if to encompass, to contain, both is as normal as the sea. Why would I imagine that the landscape inside me would be smooth and level and manageable to some suburban lawn, and not heaving with ragged, unending conflict like a torrent in a forest gully, bright with ever coming rain? And this is the line that struck me as maybe not resolution, but as satisfactory an answer as you're going to get to his opening question about place.
Yeah.
He says, wanting to run, wanting to stay, are they waves in the same ocean? So, he says, or Galway Kennel sees them 2 movements of the windscreen wiper, run, stay, run, stay. Like, it's natural. Like, I think if you were to tear open the human on the table, dissect them, I think you're just going to find in the human breast a drive to want to have home and a place and a place where you belong. That's just natural, and you're always going to want more of that. And it's also natural to explore and to want to see the other side of the moon, the other side of the mountain, the far side of the valley. And both of those, the wanderlust, they call it, right? Both of those are just inherently human. And part of what he's struggling with is like feeling like those drives are something wrong with him, when in reality they just might be what it is to be human, is to have those 2 feelings. right?
Yeah, I wonder how those feelings, the desire to be rooted and to stay, and part of that is to be known, right? I wonder how that desire, there's a sort of within, I associate both the desire to stay and to go with this deeper sense of homelessness. Like I'm like this loneliness.
Like you wouldn't desire
for things
home more.
To be the way they ought to be.
If home was perfect, you wouldn't desire home more. And if home was perfect, you wouldn't desire to leave.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see. So kind of the heavenly home.
My leaving is, surely I can find a better place and a better people. And then my desire to stay is like, surely I can make this place and this people better. Right.
Something like the Narnian ideal that he talks about in C.S. Lewis, where he says that mountain that you think of as beautiful is a shadow of the real heavenly mountain. And this home that you think of as home is the shadow of the real home. And that our heart is always longing for the real. And what we've always seen in any context is always just the shadow of the thing that we want.
So I don't know, maybe I'm not framing that exactly right. Because it just seems to me like if you ask me which of those is the better desire, I'm certainly on the stay.
On the home side.
On the home side, stay. Because there is a sort of false promise with going. But I think the real issue is that longing for something better is I think just part of life. It's just part of living as a fallen creature among fallen creatures in a fallen creation. Right?
Well, let me maybe push back on that a tiny bit. And I don't think I am. I'm not trying to be controversial today, but I think you and I have already argued several times before we even started this. But I think
you were trying to trap me into arguments
I'm
before we hit
record.
Go ahead.
Another way of thinking about it. So Genesis 1, 2, go, spread out and have dominion over the world. And then the simplest take of Babel is a failure to do that.
Right.
Now there's more to that than to it than that. There's building a name for themselves, interrupting God's building of his name with their building of their name. But the central, at least the action being described in Babel is they refuse to spread out, so I will spread them out, and they will do so by scattering their languages. And so I'm wondering, part of me wonders if, like, I hear you, but like maybe even in an unfallen world is part of our natural state not to scatter.
Right.
And this is I don't have an answer.
I think when I give the benefit of the doubt to stay, this is partly autobiographical because I was the guy who didn't stay. Right.
And is it restless? Is it rootless to scatter as God intended us to do?
Yeah, I would assume the scattering then takes root where you go, right? Yeah. But I think that's what I'm trying to wrestle with is the stay go thing and how that relates to this this strong urge that I think Paul Kingsnorth has and that I share with him for things to just be better. Yeah. So that urge for things to be better, it feels like that's another big thing that he's wrestling with in this book.
Satisfactory, right? Like he's looking for a completeness to it.
Yeah. But part of his journey through environmentalism was just his realization that what they were doing was completely pointless. That they could do nothing to actually solve the problems that they were so concerned about. Right. And there is I feel like as you get older, just there's a natural progression in that where you're 21 and stupid and you're like, let's
change the world.
Let's change the world. Yeah. And you might do something like it might even be something that's impressive from an outsider's perspective, but eventually you get to the point where you're like the amount that I actually can do feels so small.
Yeah, he struggles a little bit with reaching 44, I think, and whichever author of model, or I think it was somebody he was talking about had achieved so much by 44, and what does his life look like in I think I went through something similar to that at 33, both Jesus and Alexander the Great. 33
died,
and did a lot.
Yeah.
Up to that point, changed the world, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so Yeah, I think the midlife crisis is a rational emotional response to getting older and to having gone through this. I can change the world, and then try and do, and sometimes succeed.
Yep.
But still,
I just wonder when it comes to Paul, because again, he's a writer. So like when he takes this journey out to the field, he must have had some sort of like best case scenario in mind.
So imagine like this
and
is
I
gonna
think
work.
Like the best case scenario, maybe he gets 3 years in and he fits in with the local folk.
Yeah.
And it just enriches his writing.
Yeah,
but it feels like this book is just a confession that the opposite has happened.
Yeah.
That the words are failing him now.
Yeah.
Right?
A major theme in this book is that the words are the savage gods.
So he went somewhere to get rootedness.
Right.
And what he found increasing rootlessness. And part of that for him is, one of the quotes that really stuck out to me was when he says that as a writer, he always wants to sit outside the ring of people and observe them alone. Right. It must be, and I'm just speculating.
He's looking for that awesome.
But it must be when he
fire.
comes into this place. Like the reason they're living here is because they just don't think about that.
Right.
They just do the thing. Like they're far.
There's a quote early on that I underlined because I loved it. It was to that effect where somebody said the only. Oh man, it was.
Well, as you're finding it, it reminds me of that story because he tells the story of Papua New Guinea, and he's walking through this jungle with these guys, and they're all just singing this song that they all know, and he's like, "How incredible! Like they know this place, that they're connected to it and to each other.
They all stand on this ridge and just."
And like none of them has ever thought about that.
Right. Well, he said the history of Ireland is a history of people escaping just as soon as they could from the tiny, picturesque, damp, cramped, whitewashed and thatched cottages which people from the rest of the world still associate with Ireland. So and he's right. Like, if anything, it's not only have they not thought about it, but like the history of Ireland is people going, I got to get out of this place, right? Like, and that's how it was growing up too. Like I grew up in Silver City or Trainer, Iowa, and like the history of these farm communities is people going, I got to get out of this place. I got to find some other way.
But that's where I think there's a lot of resonance with Wendell Berry here. Is again, maybe people everywhere are self-reflective about this, but there is an aspect of the modern world when you get thrown into it, when you throw yourself into it and go to college in order to pick up these skills that allow you to succeed and to have, vertical mobility, that you do realize, oh, I've just left behind a way of life. I felt that way. I mean, I grew up in the 20th century. So, I graduated high school in 2001. And I'm so grateful for that because I do feel like, as again, it's America, it's affluence. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm sure, the machine involved in my childhood, but like if I wanted to go to a friend's house, I had to bike 4.5 miles to get there, and I had to tell my mom I'd be back in 3 hours, and she knew where I was going and that I was coming back from that place, but she didn't know where I was at any particular time. I mean, it's a very different world. We had a way of life which was simpler and a life which was more boring and connected to fewer people, right?
Yeah, for sure.
When you're part of the modern world now that we live in, we do have this sense of like, man, I wish I wasn't so fragmented constantly.
Yeah, when I think it's Christian formation, one of the classes that we go through, we talk a little bit about circles, the close circle and the broader circles, these sort of circles of relationships and what you can not only sustainably maintain, but also like what you need. You need you need this circle to be this size or similar to this, and you need this circle to be that size.
The loneliness studies says like 3 people on an intimate level, really 15 on a social level, and
but you also need this bigger circle. You need this 150 circle that's got resources and connections and can help show up and maintain all kinds of and can help maintain life. And so I think one of the things that is interesting about our time right now, talking to people who have come up in that time, is the struggle of detangling what those circles even look like, just detangling the borders between those circles and asking honestly, like, Are you, is this your close friend? Mm-hmm. Is this your acquaintance? Is this intimate to you? And having to sort of sort out and go, this person that you know online, very, very detailed intimately, because you watch hundreds and hundreds of hours of their content, is not your close friend, right? And should not have the influence in your life of a close friend.
Yeah.
But that wasn't something that I think you and I growing up in our in riding our bikes all over, that wasn't a complicated idea for us then. But I think we do end up spending more time explaining that now than we used to.
So maybe we shouldn't spend too much time on this topic. There's other things to talk about, but it was interesting as a sort of, I think you were talking about the resolution of this, but I found it also interesting that he admitted that he had broken his rootedness even to come to this place to find rootedness.
Yeah, every time he breaks
the guys that he had hung out with in the suburbs of London,
they were sad to see him leave.
Yeah, and he had good relationships with them.
Every time I thought of that too, with like the sort of move to find the perfect church or the perfect church community, is that every time you leave your community to go find this other better one, you're doing that. You're doing the thing. just make it better. Just stay. Stay. Do what you can among the people who unless you have connected to a really, really good reason. You are in the body, and part of being in the body is being a member. Part of being a member is being the person that feels the pain of the stubbed toe. Yeah. You might be the only person that feels it, but it doesn't mean the whole body doesn't need to react to it.
Yeah. It's the Andy Crouch line I talked to you about earlier, which was the trustees, the people who can be entrusted with an institution. The trustees of the institution are those who have forgiven it. Like there's a sense in which you have to accept your place. In order to make that a place where you can be rooted.
Yeah, that's a really good line. I mean, it's a really good statement, because that is, I know I'm close to people who have come and gone and who are very, very engaged, but that forgiveness is, I think, the hallmark of like sort of when you cross over to like, no, this is just my place.
So I want to talk about language, because this book, among other things, is about language. Like, for sure. He's really concerned at the beginning of the book about the failure of his words. He says
those are the savage gods.
Yeah, right. The muses, let's say. What happens when your stories don't work anymore? Your words, right? He repeats that, comes back to that over and over and over again.
Yeah. I think that if I was to be critical of him, and again, I apologize. I'm so sorry, Paul, if you ever listen to this. If I was to be critical, this would be the part where 3 in the morning
when you can't sleep. And
he just decides to randomly listen to a podcast that mentions him, and he's like, "What the heck? Why did I listen to this?" This would be the most navel gazing part of the book for me. It's like, I hear you, man. Just, I don't know, move on. Well, he does develop it into some very interesting ideas, and especially like as he's warring back and forth with these ideas of chaos and order. But for a while, it's just like my words don't express the truth any more than a picture of a cat is a cat. I'm like,
whatever. Yeah,
I hear you.
Well, but to me, it feels much more personal. It feels like, I mean, his line on page 21, he says, "The kind of words you create to speak to the urban crowds of the alienated West don't come from places like this." Right? Like I certainly feel that way. Yeah. Like I had a lot. My words were a lot different when I was in Chicago than when I'm in Omaha.
Well, and I think that actually is. I think that idea that he's developing, and obviously they go together, but it's nested very neatly in his rootlessness issue. Yeah. Partially because theoretically, in the ideal of rootedness that he's pursuing, he would derive meaning from the people and the land. Yeah. Meaning, identity himself. He would derive meaning, a purpose for himself from just the place and the time that he's in. And I think instead, what he's wrestling with is that he has derived meaning and place and purpose from his ability to use words to portray things brilliantly and truly and honestly.
It's the coming together of his writing identity and his messianic complex.
Yeah, and he's realizing that my words aren't that they're fine, but they're not so good that they're going to change anything. They don't matter that much.
So he's already sort of, I think by the time he's written this, come to terms with it, to some extent with his messianic complex. I mean, I feel like I can relate to him on a number of levels. Yeah. Like this idea that I'm actually not that important, and there's very little that I can do. Yeah. But as a writer, the other thing about it is what I said earlier, which is when you're sort of sitting outside the circle and watching everything happen, like the writer stands aloof, and he's trying to fit into a context where he can't stand aloof, where he's going to have to talk about the things that people in the small town talk about.
Right. Exactly.
And, and those are not the things that he's writing about. Right.
Yeah. Well, and he mentions at one point, maybe a more honest and better way to write would just be to simply write what he saw. Right. And then first off, he's
very literal.
Yeah. I saw a woman in a red dress cross the street. And I saw, exactly. Whatever. First off, he admits rightly, I think, that probably that's pretty boring. Although Walden's Pond is kind of that. Isn't that Walden's Pond?
I haven't read Walden's Pond, but
anyway, it's kind of that. But then he also then makes the admission that even that is not just what happened. Yeah, it's still he's still writing. He decided to see the woman in the red dress. This is the
Kavanaugh Yeats thing, right?
Yeah,
because maybe you can explain more about this. But the Yeats side of things would be to do a world-changing thing by making.
Sorry, he's
your
talking
writing
about two poets. He's talking about Kavanaugh and Yeats.
Yeah,
and he's arguing that Kavanaugh.
Well, let me speak to what I'm about to say. This makes no sense to you right now, but it will when Jared explains it. But what Yeats is doing is he's putting together language in a way which actually shapes the way that people see
creates
in a profound
a vision.
way.
Yeah,
creates a vision. Yeah. So talk about that Yeats or Kavanaugh Yeats.
Yeah. So he's contrasting Kavanaugh and Yeats, both of which he views them both as sort of formative for his personality and for his writing. So he's got them both as two of the many voices in his head. And Kavanaugh is somebody who's gone through a cycle, and in his process as a poet has landed at some point on just saying, just be in your place and talk about the thing in front of you, and don't try to have don't make an argument, and don't be apologetic about it, and don't have don't try and convince anybody. Just and anything else that you're doing, I don't want to hear about it. It's all garbage.
Yeah.
And is almost a reaction. I think it is a reaction. Kavanaugh, it sounds like, talked about Yeats, and sort of a reaction to what Kavanaugh calls Yeats's nationalism about Ireland, and that he has this vision of Ireland that I would argue is probably still persistent in the West today, of this place filled with fairies and magic and rolling green hills of beauty and discovery and nestled secret mysteries. And he's going, well, that's not only is that not Ireland, that's not any one place. Like there may be a place like that, but that's not the place that you're in. Yeah. And so he's arguing that Yeats is essentially dishonest by telling this story. And
but even there, what's one man's dishonesty is another man's vision, right?
Yeah.
I think
aspirational.
I think the really interesting thing about this whole discussion is that at the core of it, words are extremely powerful. And if you move to trying to be just purely descriptive with your words and just saying true, mundane things, what you're trying to do is you're trying to avoid, having that sort of messianic complex where I'm trying to exercise power to
change things,
right? Yeah. And the reason you might do that is if you've got a view of the world which sees words as purely power, just that I'm dominating someone else, that I'm sitting over somebody else, and I should let the other person be who they are in freedom, right? And this is one of the fascinating things about if you compare what Christian theologians say about language to what French existentialists and postmodernists say about language, is that postmodernists will say that language is a power play. And so as his messianic complex is sort of being torn away from him, and he's just learning, even through Zen Buddhism, just to be, just to be, really, just sit there. And he's sort of, he's sort of trying to relinquish his power, right? Just drop it, right?
Which is funny because he then toward the end of the book, he goes into a bit of a, I guess I call it a meditation on birdsong.
Yeah.
Where he almost goes the opposite direction again and lands with like, well, nature doesn't do that, right?
Exactly.
Nature doesn't, he basically says we call it birdsong, but they would not call it songs. They're calling these are out of state. These are them staking out territory and calling mates and warning each other of danger.
Yeah.
They are changing the world around them in their society.
Which comes back to
their song.
Which comes back to the whole thing. Like what postmoderns, when they call language a power play, I'm exercising domination.
Right.
Christians would say that language is a part of dominion.
Right.
It's about exercising creaturely care.
Stewardship.
Yeah. So what was funny to me is he writes beautifully. There's some sentences in there where I just was like, wow.
Yeah.
And one of them was an extremely tragic sentence about his father. But but the thing about it is, like, he when he talks about producing art, like, what is creativity without a creator? Like, we Christians believe language is about love,
right?
And it's about creating as a means of love,
right? Exactly.
Like I generate things in order for people not to be hoodwinked or overpowered or dominated by my language, but in order to see more clearly the beauty that is the real.
Well,
right?
and even if you could be absolutely brilliantly evocative and convey only ever the perfect real. He at one point he says,
but what I'm saying though is mere descriptive language falls short of the glory of creation. So poetry refers to the real in
100%, 100%. And that's one of the things I think at one point he almost did a dismissive side comment, but he says something like, if I could craft one or two beautiful sentences per book, that I would have one. And again, if Paul's listening to this, I love this sentence, and it is not accurate. Right? But it's beautiful. He says, I will dream of what Paris was like before Europe began rotting in a stew of sugar and electricity. Sure. I love that. That conveys meaning. Now, is Paris literally rotting in a stew of sugar and electricity? I don't think so. Right?
Depends who you ask.
Depends on who you ask. But there is a truth
sure.
and meaning there that's deeper than the literal accurate description of what the Paris is, stewing in. Anyway, it's a beautiful sentence.
And he gets, 101 to 102, he starts talking about beauty even. He's asking if he should just stop writing and make ash splint baskets. He just wants to make one beautiful ash splint basket.
If I could make one beautiful. Right? I think that's actually where he says the thing about if I could craft one beautiful sentence, I would have done something.
I think if I had an opportunity to talk to him, I would just wonder, like, how has your conversion to Christianity changed the way that you see language? Like, language is about love. Language is about beauty and helping others to see the beauty of the infinite, the beauty of God and his nature and creation. And I mean, there's surplus beauty. It's awe-inspiring, and it points us back to the source of all that beauty.
Related to language, I guess. This is just something that I thought was funny, mostly because it vindicates me, and anytime something vindicates me, I'm a fan. But he took a stab at, I don't know if he did or he was just quoting somebody else's stab at the Canterbury Tales. Okay. But it's become relatively, I am. Yeah,
you're a Canterbury Tales hater.
I'm a Canterbury Tales hater. Yeah. And so he says to start
have you read Sir Gawain?
No.
And the Green Knight? Okay.
Was that Canterbury? That's not in Canterbury.
No, but
was it by Chaucer?
No, it's not by Chaucer.
I have read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but which I think is much better than Canterbury Tales.
Yeah, we should talk about that sometime.
Yeah. To start this process, he says, Graves blasted the canon. The history of literature in Britain, he declared, should not begin with the Canterbury Tales, but with the Song of Amergin. And then he quotes a piece of that. I was like, okay.
Fair point.
I agree with you, not even because I have an opinion about the Song of Amergin, although it is beautiful.
Yeah.
But because I'm happy to see the Canterbury Tales dethroned from anywhere where it is enthroned.
My hope for Paul Kingsnorth is that his Christianity reinvigorates his writing, right? Like he even said again about him being a writer is that he the weight that was on him was the weight of knowing too much, seeing too much, taking in too much, staring too long into the abyss. So he's ruminating. He's seeing all these issues and these problems, and he wants to do something about it. And he feels so powerless about it. Yeah. But I think that even as I've listened to him since his conversion, the biggest change that he keeps talking about is this sense of hopelessness is gone.
Yeah, he doesn't just talk about the machine now. He talks about the machine contrasted with the garden or the temple, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really, really important, because the machine is terrifying and it's worth hating and it's worth fighting and everything else. But if all you have is the desperate fear of and running from the machine, then that is terrifying. I mean, he ends his book with, "What must I do now?" Right? That's his. And
what God does my writing serve? That's another question he asks.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's exactly. I think that would be a major change, at least what I've seen. Like you said, it'd be interesting to have the conversation with Paul Kingsnorth at some point and ask, what if anything is changing for you? I know he's when he converted to Orthodox. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, but he converted to Orthodox Christianity, which is, as much as any tradition, just laden with symbolic imagery and in some respects what he's railing against,
and a deep reverence for the created
creation,
nature, right?
But in some respect, maybe not railing against, but one of the sides of what he's wrestling with is this, the symbolic, the capacity of symbolic words to capture any meaning whatsoever. Well, Orthodox Christianity is laden with the capacity of symbolic things to capture meaning and to convey true meaning. So it's
but not capture in the sense that I've got it in a cage.
No, not gild it at all.
It's elusive.
Evoke it, like you said, to communicate it, to talk about the glory of God. And so where I know that he has sort of landed at this point makes me go, he must have found some part of that solution, because if you're celebrating and enjoying Orthodox Christianity, the one thing you're not doing is saying, "I wonder if symbols have any truth in them." But that is at the heart of the Orthodox experience.
But I think that's where even he gets to towards the end. He says you shouldn't replace life with representations of life, because they can become more attractive than life itself. And I think that for him, that's one of the things that was compelling about Christianity, was that language is poor. We admit it's poor. It can also be breathtakingly beautiful, but it's breathtakingly beautiful because the reality to which it refers is so much more breathtakingly beautiful. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, in the end, I was glad that I read the book. Although about 2/3 of the way through, I was like, why did he have me read this book?
Too. It was about 2/3 of the way through that I'm like, I get it. I just don't know if I care if I finish or not.
Yeah.
But actually, no, it's a really good book.
For me, it really, it felt like a perfect setup to the end of the story obviously his story is still ongoing, but it is a perfect bridge to his conversion.
Yeah, if you're following,
because you begin to
conversion,
see his wrestle with what am I doing with language? Why am I even writing? What's the
Yeah, we have the benefit of hindsight and seeing more of his life to look back on here. But looking at this, you go, oh man, he's got some good answers coming. Here's the thing: he wrestles several times with. His father took his own life, but also with several other authors who either died early for various reasons or took their own lives. Yeah. And there is that sort of torment. We were talking about this earlier. There is that sort of tormented artist thing.
Yeah. And it's real. There's generational influences of suicide too. I mean, you could feel his own inner wrestle in describing that. Right?
And so that story, if all you had read was this, and then the next thing you knew was that had happened, that is a dark. That would be a darkly familiar story, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It would have been a dark possibility.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see him landing and running on again. His story's not over, but it's beautiful to see him landing and running on in a direction that is not that, because this was an unraveling.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a review of the book Facing Down the Furies, and essentially that it's a secular argument against suicide. And I think the secular argument of suicide is quite bad. The Stoics said you should cheerfully excuse yourself from life like you would at a dinner
party.
At a dinner party. Yeah. And but the other side of it is that there's incredible hope even for the most destitute in Jesus, because what you have is you have the Creator who makes sense of the brokenness that we're in by stepping into that brokenness, and so there's a I'm creature, I'm not creator. But what I can do is I can be like my Creator in the absorbing suffering, stepping into particularity in the world that I am, engaging with the beauty, building good things, and both in word and in deed, embodying the kingdom and the message of the gospel that comes through Jesus.
Right. One of the mysteries of God, right, is that he sort of embodies both the particularity and the universal. Yeah. This, we talk about this in other contexts, but the immanence versus the transcendence of God, right, is like the mud squishing beneath Jesus's toes at the same time that the Godhead is experiencing, all of this. Yeah. Perfect knowledge over
holding
everything.
The universe together.
Is unfathomable, but it does if it doesn't answer anything, it does bring into focus some of the tension that he's wrestling with here, right? Is like is our home a particular place where we're perfectly loved and perfectly well known, or is it dominion over the cosmos? And the answer is sort of like a yes and, right?
The suffering is not senseless. Frustration is not senseless. Yeah. And so we have freedom with the hope that we possess in Jesus Christ to root ourselves where we are and to build beautiful things, to build beautiful relationships and communities and do good work where we are.
And to be tethered enough to be able to go where we need to go.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you for recommending the book. I do recommend that you listen to some podcasts with Paul Kingsnorth. He's a fascinating person. You're probably not going to agree with him, especially politically. I don't think anybody, left or right, would agree with him entirely.
I don't think anybody's going to take everything he says and go, you know what, wholeheartedly, let's do it all.
So follow Jesus, not Paul Kingsnorth, but it's definitely worth reading, and I've just enjoyed it because it brings up a deeper sort of layer of musing on language and how to love each other with our words. So all right, well, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
All right. So now do you want to argue about whether or not writing can be done without pain?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I do think that in our current scene, pain is part of writing.
Is what?
It's a necessary part of writing. Yeah. I mean, even, I don't know, you could pick out like the most mundane, painless thing. Yeah. Like that would be a good counterexample.
Sure. I mean, like Louis L'Amour Western novel. And I don't mean that disparagingly.
No, he
was a class.
So I've not read Louis, but it has a conflict, right? There's pain there.
Okay, so you don't mean like the author needs to be sweating blood and killing themselves.
No, but I think the reason the stories are compelling is because the author knows what a conflict is and experientially is writing out of that deep knowledge of what that conflict is like. And you even the most mundane children's stories, like "Are You My Mother?" or "There's a monster at the end of this book," or all of these things
they're all laden with uncertainty and they understand what it
longing.
Is to be uncertain.
Yeah.
So then the flip side would be, what is he criticizing?
Okay.
What's the painless thing? What's the drivel that has no pain, that comes from nowhere? What's the, he says, writing without pain is just entertainment. What would be just entertainment?
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Can we think of an example of that?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be argumentative. My point is kind of like, it has no teeth either way, right? it's like either you don't really need the pain he's talking about in order to write well, or if it's so broad that it's all pain, then I would say, well, then nothing is.
Okay.
Then what's the criticism?
Okay, yeah. So, he says the writing needed me at some level always to be unhappy.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay.
So I think that his quote from Alice Thompson is that art that doesn't come from pain is just entertainment. I can certainly think of some entertainment that is not rooted deep enough in pain.
Mm-hmm. Sure. It could use a better anchor. It could use a better somebody who really does understand this a little bit better.
Yeah,
writing.
Yeah.
Certainly. There's a line in at page 60. He says, "The only reason to write is because you can't not write.
Yeah.
Because something sharp and heated is pushing through you."
Yeah, I think that's clearly wrong.
And part of me is just like, and I don't know. I don't know individual authors' stories well enough to be able to say like yes or no. But you have like I just imagine your Arthur Conan Doyle or your, I don't know, Louis L'Amour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just cranking out technically good work that is entertaining, and it does have pain, and it does come from real places. Louis L'Amour was a cowboy, and then he writes cowboy stuff, right?
Yep.
And so part of it is like, and if, I guess the other side of it would be, if it was only entertaining, would that be bad?
Oh, yeah. And I think C.S. Lewis would clearly say no.
Right.
I think that, amusement, the word amusement comes from the root to not think.
Okay. I don't know that.
So like there is
amuse would be like the inspired, and you say not inspired.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So there is there are, I don't know, the one that keeps popping into my head, which is not a writing form, but I guess you could have scripted it. But my girls have been watching the Beast games.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's totally scripted. Not scripted in the sense that it's fake, but like the editing.
Totally.
There's writing genius behind this. Yeah.
But I mean, like in one sense, the show's about nothing.
Right.
But in another sense, it's got philosophical and moral themes that are deeply entrenched in it. So there actually is quite a bit of pain in there.
Yeah. There's an enormous amount of, I'll be honest and say the guilty pleasure reason for us watching the Beast games is to watch people get shattered.
Cry.
Yeah. Just to get the, like,
you're a terrible person.
They're just like, I gave up $1 million for you, and now you're cutting me?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. I don't know why we're laughing.
Because the show is so brutal. In like a very buoyantly funny, happy way. Like,
what about like
I think Jimmy.
What about like the Japanese game show where they're just jumping through shapes?
Oh no, for sure. But I think the funny thing about Beast games, I don't think this is an outtake if you wanted to use it for that, but nobody is listening to this anyway. But Jimmy Beast, whatever his last name is, the guy who is Jimmy from Beast games, to me is like the epitome, like the picture of a sociopath. Not because I know anything about him, but because he doesn't
have like a philosophical agenda.
Right.
He's just like a puppet master.
Yeah, it's like his show is so gleefully happy and yet also so brutal. And those two things together are married in his smile to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if I
piles and piles of money that you're invited to swim in, you just can't take it.
If I was to express the brutality and that joyful happiness together, it would be his picture.
These stupid simple games that just crush people's souls.
Yeah.
Like I'm here so that my child can go to school, and I can't remember what order these blocks go in. You know.
Yeah. Everybody's buried. I mean, I haven't seen much of it yet, but everybody's buried in these coffins, and like they one by one, they're going to be invited out to take some portion of the money, and just the crestfallenness as they come out and realize that the person before them that they trusted took everything.
Took it all. Wow.
You're just like, what?
Yeah. No, that's true.
It's a shocking. Anyway, I don't know how we got to Beast games, but the writing.
We're talking about pain and the pointless. I mean, in a sense that there's pointless pain there, right? Which is kind of the epitome of evil. I mean, this is the dissected frog in Paralandra.
Yeah, this is the
Pain
this
that
is
goes
the example.
nowhere.
That is essentially the accusation of the problem of pain, right? Is to
Mhm.
say that there was no point to this. There was no justification for this.
Yeah. Or there could be. There could be no justification if you're
there's no way to justify
this. That's Dostoevsky's thing.
Right. Which I think a lot of Christian philosophers, a lot of philosophers have done a great job answering. Actually, there probably could be.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
We don't even know what it is, but the fact that there could be is enough to defang that argument.
Right.
Or it should be enough to defang that argument.
And I think that's part of what the cross does for us is it gives us a sort of down payment, even if we don't have the full calculus or explanation.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, I think we agree. So we must be right.
We must be right. I don't even know.